Welcome to the Power 365 show. Before we chat with today's guests, I want to give a shout out to the folks that support the show. They support the show through buymeacoffee.com/NZ365guy. And what I've done in the show notes today is listed out those that have left their names and have left a message. And I really want to thank them. One that really pops to mind, Mike Ford, was the first to actually leave a supporter's message there. And I really appreciate it. Thanks, Mike, for that. And over the coming months, I hope to highlight some of those key people that are involved in the community that are doing great things and that support the show. But with that, remember, full show notes can be found either on the website, podcast.nz365guy.com, or within your favorite podcast player. Now, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Tulsa, Oklahoma in the USA. She works at Microsoft as a Power Platform developer advocate. She's a process automation princess, a SharePoint Siren, the karaoke queen, and the woman who codes but teaches others to build apps and automations with zero code. She loves helping customers solve problems and maximize their business productivity through the use of creative solutions. You can follow her on Twitter at April Dunnam. April, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So tell me, I mean, you're famous, right? When I take a quick look on Twitter or YouTube, you've got over 7,000 followers I see on YouTube. When I look at Twitter, you've had over 1 million views of the content there you've created. You've got over 16,000 followers there. You've been an MVP, and of course, you're at Microsoft now. You've had a whirlwind career.
Yeah, a lot has happened in a relatively short amount of time. Yeah, just the past, 3 years or so, a lot of changes and going from MVP to working here at Microsoft. It's been wild. It's been great.
So I got to see you briefly at MVP Summit, the last one that was held in person when you were an MVP. And how much has your world changed, particularly in the last 12 months, 24 months, from, how has COVID impacted everything? How has this career change impacted what you're doing?
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. So, I went from, I will say, I think I switched careers at their, companies at the right time. Because when I was an MVP, I was doing my own consulting company. So it was myself and a couple others. And we were pretty lean and mean, but doing a lot of Power Platform consulting. And, that's where the MVP came out of. Did a lot of videos and blogging and all of that. So that was all before COVID. And things were already starting to slow down a little just because of, our client base in the consulting company. It was a lot of oil and gas, and there were some dips and stuff there. But then the opportunity for Microsoft came about, and originally it was in a different org than I am in now with the advocacy team. It was in the One Commercial Partner organization where I worked in the modern work segment of that to help one-on-one with our partners build solutions leveraging Microsoft Teams and the Power Platform. So that was kind of my in. I knew Bob German kind of recruited me for that. He was on the team at that time before he left for advocacy as well, on that team for Microsoft Teams advocacy. So I thought, it was a great opportunity. I wasn't necessarily looking at the moment, but I couldn't really turn down, it's kind of everyone's dream, especially MVPs, right? Using Microsoft products to work for Microsoft. So since it just came about, I decided to try it and see what it was like. And I'm really glad I did. That was, I'd only had my MVP for about a year before the opportunity came about, but I'm glad I got to experience MVP and the MVP Summit before coming here and now eventually landing in advocacy.
Yeah, exciting. Before we drill into how you got to where you are, particularly from, why you got into technology. Tell us about family, food, and fun, kind of, those three things in your part of the world.
Yeah, all things I love. So family, I'm married and I have two wonderful stepkids, a son and a daughter. I have my cat, Mr. Jingles. So I'm a dog and a cat person, but I do, my husband turned me on to be a cat person because he had cats.
Nice.
And food, love food. I'm not a great cook myself, but I love, you ever wear where we travel to be able to find interesting food places that have been on, like the Food Network and different things to try. So love all that. And then super into music as a hobby. Both my husband and I, kind of do some acoustic stuff and play in a band together.
Wow. You play in a band. So tell me more.
Yeah, my husband, he's the guitar player. So he does acoustic and electric. I do a little bit of harmonica and mostly sing and teaching myself some ukulele as well. So
wow, it's so cool. And tell me, where did the SharePoint Siren? Where did obviously your roots were back in SharePoint? Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to do in tech, I kind of had this internship at a casino, and I was in the IT department there in the application development, and they happened to be in the middle of a big SharePoint implementation at the time. That's where they needed the help. So that was my first introduction into SharePoint. And as we all know, SharePoint's one of those things. Once people know that you have that skill set, it's kind of you're in it. So that's why I went with that. Doing some hardcore development, with C# and all of that in SharePoint for many years, and doing a lot of on-prem stuff, of course, back then. And 2010, when SharePoint 2010 was pretty big, and solutions and all of that. So it was really a natural kind of movement from that into the Power Platform once the cloud and all that took off, and moving from the InfoPath and the SharePoint designers to Power Apps and Power Automate.
You touched on InfoPath there. Are you still seeing a lot of InfoPath? Is it still being used a lot out in industry?
There's still a lot of legacy out there that hasn't been updated. I don't see a lot of net new stuff, being created in there, which is good. It's encouraging. But yeah, there's just still so much legacy InfoPath and SharePoint Designer workflows out there that are yet to be migrated over. And, the clock is ticking on that. So
yeah. Yeah, and of course, it fits squarely with what Power Apps can do to address those, particularly around the flexibility with mobility and access to what would have formerly been in those environments. If I look at let's take YouTube, for example, where you've got, a massive following. A lot of folks, even now, considering becoming an MVP, they say, I'm not necessarily a blogger. And, my advice is YouTube's where it's at nowadays. I don't think TikTok's taken off enough to go, let's do everything on TikTok in 30-second or 1-minute videos. But how did you get started on YouTube? And kind of, if you could share with what are the lessons learned, or what are the things that, oops, I shouldn't have done that. This is a better way to do it. What advice would you give to folks listening? Yeah,
YouTube is great. And I will say, for anyone trying to figure out, well, I want to do something, whether it's blog or give back to the community, but you're not sure how, blogging is still great. That's how I started off, was blogging initially, just trying to get the things I was learning written down and out there somewhere so that not only I could remember when I run into it again, but can also help others in the process. But if you're like me, I did blogging as a necessary means back then, but I don't really particularly like writing too much. Yeah, it's very painstaking for me. So when video and YouTube, I started seeing more tech stuff and like the Shane Youngs, right? And people actually making it work for the stuff I was working on. That made me think, well, this seems pretty cool. I know I like watching videos myself. Maybe I should give it a shot and try doing that, because maybe it'll save me time and I don't have to write it all down. And it really did. For me, it was just much easier for me to explain something in a quick video than have to spend hours writing and proofreading and wondering if I wrote that right. So I loved it from the moment. Lots of lessons learned for sure. I think a lot of us that start on YouTube have no idea what we're doing when we first started off. So along the way, biggest things I've learned is just, having a good quality setup, right? No one wants to really listen or watch a video if your audio is cutting in and out, or, kind of echoey, and just like if you have bad audio. And then video too. One of the things I had to really overcome was I didn't show my face in my YouTube videos for the longest time. It was just audio only. And I think maybe that was limiting how many people were actually staying and watching the content, just because I think for all the feedback I've got from other YouTubers that I know is, seeing your face on there really helps increase interaction and engagement with your videos. So I had to kind of overcome some personal self-esteem and just issues to be able to get the courage to do that. But I'm glad that I did. It's not as scary as as I had in my head. So anyone out there listening, don't let that stop you. I think that is a big thing, is having that, even if it's just in the introduction, showing your face a little bit so people get to know you and who you are and who they're learning from. So that was a big lesson.
I like it. Any recommendations on recommended length of them? Have you found any, length of time for a YouTube video works better than others and in the Power Platform space? And then the other thing I would have to ask here is what are your go-to tools? Are you using things like green screens? What's your video editing software? That type of thing.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the tools and then I'll circle back to the process there. With tools, I do have a green screen that I got recently. I don't use it in every video because I kind of like to show my background, but in certain ones, when I want to show, like on my Power Platform Rewind series, for example, where it's just more news-based type thing, like an overview, I'll use the green screen. It's just one of those pop-up Elgato green screens. That's great.
Yep.
And then again, the most important thing is, if anything, is good quality audio. So I just use kind of one of the standards here, a good introductory USB mic, the Blue Yeti. So that's what I've been using for a while. There's all kinds, but I think that's a good mid-range microphone. And then I did upgrade my camera setup recently. I think that was another big one. I was using just an out-of-the-box kind of webcam for a while. So I have a mirrorless Sony ZV-1, which I think has really helped the quality. And of course, lighting, I think, is the other big thing if you're going to show your face in the video and not just do audio and a screen share. You have to make sure that you have good lighting. So if you have natural lighting, that's great, but I have some Elgato lights as well for the setup there.
I've just ordered my Elgato lights. They're being shipped from Amazon at the moment.
Yeah, they're great. I love it with the Stream Deck as well, being able to program it and just easily switch it. Okay, so the other thing that was length, that's an interesting one. And you mentioned earlier TikTok and all of that. That's an interesting thing that I've seen emerging. Everything that I talk to and everything that I notice from analytics is really the shorter, the better of the video. Attention start kind of weaning about, at the 3-minute mark or so in a lot of videos, really. Just attention spans are just going down the drain every day. So you got to keep people engaged. So, and I think it does, though, depend on the type of content. There's one thing to show like very hands-on content, and that can be a little bit longer. But my sweet spot, I try to keep my videos about 20 minutes or less for YouTube. But I do see, the TikTok style, 60-second format really taking off. And I've been experimenting with it for Power Platform, but obviously the Scott Hanselmans and people like that are huge with TikTok. And I think that's an emerging area that we're going to see a lot more content for Power Platform come out of.
Yeah, Scott's amazing the way he can transition mediums and engage so effectively.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's lots of people too. I can't remember his name, but he works at Microsoft as well, and he focuses a lot on the student area with Excel and things like that. Okay. He has a huge TikTok following, also with his quick tech tips, I think is what he calls them. So lots of people being successful with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, a lot of people laughed at TikTok when it came out and stuff, like any new media, but it's becoming more and more the mainstream of engagement, I suppose I'll say, because it really covers more than just, the fun videos, but the learning, etc. Yeah,
definitely. I think, I think there's still a lot of maybe TikTok hate out there, but a lot of people are coming around. One way that I like to use it is, for YouTube, when you're putting content out there, whether it's a blog or YouTube, you get a lot of questions. So I think TikTok is a great medium to answer those quick questions. You might not need a full video on YouTube about it, but you can pop up the question, answer it really quickly on a TikTok, and rather than just having to sit and reply to the comments and typing it all out.
Yeah, love it. I love it. You'd think the show was just about social media posting and content creation. Just editing tools. What do you use for video editing?
I've just stuck with Camtasia. That's a lot of us, especially from the MVPs, really use Camtasia a lot. I haven't really tried anything else at this point, but it's been just does it all, right? You can record with it and you can edit, so can't really beat it.
Nice. Okay, let's talk about Fusion development. I must admit, I don't know a heck of a lot about Fusion development. I've heard the phrase out there. I know it's about collective, bringing all skills to the table when it comes to development. But in your words, what is Fusion development, and what's Microsoft's focus in this area?
Yeah, so it's really nothing new. It's been around a while. It's really all about, kind of dev as a team sport. It's about having people of different skill sets, whether it's your code-first developers that know C# or whatever, insert whatever language in there, and your low-code devs, or the people that know the business process that you're trying to create a solution around really well, and giving them a way to work together in these fusion development teams so that they can solve in that process and build the solution that's needed. That's really all it is at its core. And that's something that we're really focusing on a lot here, especially in the Power Platform advocacy side, because there's so many possibilities with fusion development and dev as a team sport with the Power Platform and, Azure Functions, C# and all of that.
Yeah. So with that, like if a company goes, we want to set up, a center of excellence within our organization. We've committed to the Power Platform as a tool for our organization. How do they go about, assembling a fusion development team? What are the go-dos that you would recommend to bring those resources together, perhaps implement methodologies that are effective and creating the right culture for that fusion team? Even perhaps, you might have some stories from the field what are you seeing works effectively?
Yeah, there's lots of success stories of the fusion teams and just, Power Platform COEs and standing up that really well. Obviously, the Schlumbergers is probably like one of the capstone ones like that you hear. Because fusion dev, oftentimes we talk about, code first devs and low code devs, but you don't want to forget about IT pros as well and that side of things and managing it and handling security and all of that side of the things as well. So I think it's really just a matter of identifying those key players. So who are the code first developers, the pro devs, whatever you want to call them in your organization that are building solutions right now using full code and getting together the people, the business users and ideally, I think if you can find business users that are savvy in, say, Excel and different things like that and PowerPoint and all of that, even more better as far as establishing a fusion dev team, because with those skills, you can easily learn, say, Power Apps if you're trying to build an application solution like that, if you already have kind of that knowledge ahead of time. But it's really about, leveraging their knowledge of the process and the business. And then, of course, your IT pros and identifying those stakeholders early and getting them involved in the planning process and always talking, I think, is key. You don't want to have shadow IT. You don't want to have people left in the dark. And that's why, a center of excellence and establishing those stakeholders and people and getting them together early in the process as you're rolling it out is really key. And that's where you see the success stories come out, is people that have followed that.
So are you getting pushback from any area? Like particularly, what jumps to my mind is pro devs going, well, are we babysitting, the citizen developers or the low code developers? How do you get over, if you like, those common barriers at the us and them type mentality that we see in everything? Can be from SharePoint to Dataverse being a data source to Canvas over model to there's any number logic over Power Automate. So how do you address this from a fusion development perspective?
That is a tough one. I will say, surprisingly, I haven't seen that quite as much as I expected that I would. It seems like more of these teams are emerging, and it's that us versus them mentality isn't necessarily a barrier. But of course, there is some of that still around for sure. I think one of the things too, when we're talking about fusion development and the Power Platform, a lot you have to address that fear, and that's probably where the us versus them mentality comes from. As well, is this going to take away my job? Are we going to build everything in the Power Platform and not need anything built in custom code and all that? And I think the key to addressing that early on is from the start, recognizing that it's not just an all or nothing thing, and recognizing that the Power Platform as a code first developer, pro dev, is something that you can leverage to make your job easier and bring even more value. So it's not something where you have to give up, writing those APIs that you love to write or, creating controls or whatever it might be that you love to do. It's something that you can take what you're already doing, the APIs that you're building, and you can just offer a mechanism for low-code developers to be able to plug and play and use that inside of their solution. So you're not having to babysit, you're giving some of the power and you're controlling what you can do with the API, but giving low-code devs the power to use that and bring more value faster. So I think if you address that this is not this is something, it's another tool in your tool belt, not something that's going to replace what you're doing. That really solves a lot of that conversation.
Yeah. I know that for some time, and I feel like we're starting to steer away from it. There was concern with developers that everything was going to be replaced with low code. But of course, the minute you drill into doing some serious heavy lifting with Power Apps, you quickly find there's a lot of development involved, right? There's definitely the layer of, let's say, relatively simple apps that can be built in a low code model. But there's still this, if you want to do something if you want to do something amazing with the interface, right, you're going to get into UI change. You're going to look at PCF. If you're going to, as you talked about the API, if you're going to connect to anything else, there's going to be a demand for, connected development. If we were to, from your developer perspective, what are the core things that you're seeing developers, back in my day, where, and I come from a very strong Dynamics CRM background originally, we saw developers doing, commonly writing complex workflows, writing plugins, web resources, things like this. What are you seeing a pivot, from the people you're engaging with, the projects you're seeing, the customers you're working with? Are you seeing a pivot to what the core, pro dev or dev first developers are doing these days?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on a lot of that, right? I mean, for Power Apps can get you a long way and it can do a lot, but you're going to hit that wall. And so one of the things that we're seeing pro devs extending is those adding in custom controls. So whether you need some custom gauge component or whatever it might be, where you can leverage your TypeScript skills and all of that to build, I mean, that's a big one. Plugins are still a thing, right? Model-driven apps and all that's still around here. So there's still a need for plugins, web resources. Power Apps portals is another one where, that's easily can go into the pro dev side of things, depending on what you're wanting to do. That's another big part of the Power Platform and integrating. And then, of course, just the whole data aspect in general, because that's one of the things, if you're talking about, maybe the low code devs who don't come from a traditional database background, maybe they don't necessarily have that knowledge of tables and relationships and all of that. I mean, that's a big part of the process. And that's where, from that kind of architecture side of things, where I'm seeing a big shift in a lot of developers coming in and helping with how do you architect a structurally sound solution for the Power Platform? Because, low-code dev can bust out a flow and Power Automate easily, can build a Canvas app, but it's that architect, that data modeling, that solution layer that really a pro dev can bring a lot of value and help close the gap on.
Yeah. What are you seeing then on the flip side of that with the newcomers, the people that, I was just speaking yesterday with Alan from Slumberjay, and I was asking him about, how are they seeing, like a subject matter expert, they know their job role, their job function. Is he seeing this kind of pivot of people that they get exposed to the Power Platform? Let's say they're in HR, but they get exposed to the Power Platform and they build a few HR apps, and then they realize that, I'd rather career doing this technology thing than just, being in human resources. And there's this pivot happening. What are you seeing from your perspective? Are you seeing, people that wouldn't have considered themselves technologists, but after, 2, 3, 4 months of being, whether they're using Power Automate or Power Apps, that their careers are changing?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think that's something that I see on a weekly, if not maybe even daily basis. And that's one of my favorite things about this advocacy role is being in the position to really discover and hear those stories of these career switchers, people that traditionally were in HR. I think of like Anna, Inez, who I was just talking with. She was in HR and she found out about Dynamics and then the Power Platform and switched. Even on our own team here, we have Joe Camp. He was in finance for years, and then he started looking at Power Apps, and now he's on our advocacy team, talking and really working on that career switcher story and getting more people involved in Power Apps. There's just no shortage. I was talking with someone the other day who was in a project management, and he saw a gap and a need and built a Power BI dashboard, learned it in a day, and then now he's built 2 Power Apps, and now he's head of their citizen development at the company. Just completely went from project management to that. There's so many great stories of, and I think that goes to show just how easy it is to get ramped up and to build solutions, and how powerful the platform is, that people can go and, from a totally different career, fill a need, solve a gap, and then create a passion for it, and eventually a career.
Yeah. Tell me more, because I want to come back to this, because and I'll just field some questions that I've had from a range of people that are wanting to career switch and the challenges that they're coming, across. But before I do that, can you expand a bit more about this advocacy role that you do? What does that mean? What does your day in the life look like in this role?
Yeah, so really the advocacy org, is big. We have advocates for all the different technology stacks, from Power Platform, Microsoft 365, Azure, and Java, and all of that. So I'm on the Power Platform side of things. And really what we do as advocates is we advocate for and to developers of Microsoft products in general. So for me, I'm focusing on the Power Platform side and advocating for anyone using it, whether you're a code first developer, an IT pro, or a low code developer, career switcher, whatever it might be. So that can involves finding these stories and these hero-making stories of people that have switched careers, and helping however we can, whether it's from Microsoft Learn documentation, making sure our documentation is up to date and valid. We want to get that feedback. If there's something that isn't there in the documentation, that's maybe, or something that's wrong in the documentation that needs to be addressed, and that's prohibiting you from being able to learn or do something. If there's gaps in there, creating video content, obviously, speaking at events, everything that we can do to get feedback, to make the product better and give that back to the people that can make it happen, to making sure that we have all the right resources so that someone who is, say, a career switcher wanting to learn the platform from scratch has everything they need to get started.
Awesome. Okay, so I take it, are some of those stories published, the career switching stories published somewhere?
Yeah, so we have a few different areas where they are. So we have obviously the Power Apps blogs. There's a blog on the tech community on Learn too. We have a Learn blog where we have a lot of the stories also that we publish. Awesome.
Okay, so back to what you were talking about before, with career switches. So in the last month, I've had multiple people from different countries, at least 3 different countries, have reached out to me about career switching, and they've reached out as in two of the individuals were in roles where they were working for a local government agency. And in there, they have products that have been in there for years. Technology One comes to mind, Civica, that'll place, obviously one of these people in Australia. The other one specifically was in Scotland. And they're in roles that are traditional IT pro, let's say, roles. And they know that within their organization, IT have said, move slowly, and we're not going to implement or license up for the Power Platform. So I'll just use that generically as in any licensing across that. But they've fallen in love as people inside these IT orgs, in this case, with the Power Platform, whether, they've, within Office 3 or Microsoft 365, they've clicked on something and they've become passionate about it. And they're in this unique position that they know the company that they're in has got no appetite, but they're freaking out about, do they just go on the job market when they haven't had done any work in Power Platform? What are you seeing anybody that's really put a course together or put a career plan together that takes, people? Another one was a tradie recently who hit me up via Reddit. And how does he realizes his body's not going to keep handling the hard physical work, and he wants to get it into a career that's lucrative and that has runway in front of it. And of course, I think Power Platform is a great opportunity. But are you seeing anybody with the inside organizations that are really putting a program together to guide somebody over a 3 to 6 month period of going from, I'm a hairdresser and I want to get into tech and I want to do it with Microsoft Power Platform. You seeing anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's some. I'm seeing that a lot. Like I know, like some of the Power Cat people probably have some good stories on this too. But I've just, from what I've heard from my resources, I think a lot of the companies that you hear of that have good Power Platform COEs and like the Allens and the Schlumbergers and all that. They have programs like that. They have ongoing training for the Power Platform that anyone can attend and figure out how to become an app maker in the platform. And I think a lot of them do have kind of that guided training there to get you from that and enable you to be a maker. And I know there's several success stories that have come from that with bigger companies and even some smaller medium incorporating that. And I think that's huge. I mean, I would love to see more companies having some kind of internal upskilling for Power Platform, formal program in there. And that's something, that I'm passionate about as well. I want to work on a general upskilling plan, right? For how do you take someone 0 to hero to be able to, be a maker in the Power Platform and have that in their skill set so that if they do want to transition and do that, they have everything that they need and the resources to do that.
Yeah. It's like the ability, and it's because it's not just tech skills, right? There's some soft skills around it. Everything from, project management to consulting to how do you, gather requirements? How do you build, something like this? There's a lot around it. And so, if you come across anyone, I'd be keen to have a discussion around it, because I feel there's a gap now that's starting to widen. And the thing is, with big companies like Schlumberger and Virgin Atlantic is another one that comes to mind. That they've already well up and running. That they've created a facility to allow them to keep producing, great talent. But I'm looking more for the ones that are totally, they're not exposed, if you like, to Microsoft. I'm seeing, university grads is another one. They can't land their first job, for whatever reason, but they've realized that perhaps their degree was that's not going to take them where they wanted, and so they want to get into tech. And I think, I know that Microsoft Learn would play a key part in that, but I'm just wondering are there other resources out there to assist folks like this?
Yeah, come to think of it, Rory Neary, Power Platform MVP, he has a great course. And I think I did saw recently pop up on YouTube, he's starting to do as well some of that soft skill stuff that we talked about. Like he had a great video that pops up on agile development and methodology and how to use that in Power Apps. So he has that powerplatformlearn.com, and that would be probably outside of just some of the Learn Doc and stuff that we have here, a really great resource that comes to mind for some community stuff to really get that training, for holistic training from the tech side to the soft skill side. Yeah, nice. Recently we had Build, and a lot of things dropped in that. I mean, you're seeing what's coming out or what's next. What date are we? I think it was as the new announcement we made of the next Wave release. What are you seeing that's exciting you in the future? Yeah, there were so many great announcements at Build that really got me excited, especially, falling into that Fusion development story there. Lots going on as far as the command line tooling side of things. So, for a while, it's been a little bit disparate about having to have different, tools for maybe unpacking your source code versus, handling PCF controls and all of that. Yeah. So that was one of the big announcements that excited myself and a lot of people, is the support in the CLI and kind of unification of that for handling source codes and packaging solutions and all of that, and the Visual Studio Code extension. So being able to easily with that extension do all of that stuff as you could through the CLI in there as well. So there's a lot of announcements making the pro dev experience easier, so they don't have to go out, they can stay in the tools that they're used to, like VS Code, and interact with Power Apps and, see the source code and all of that. Everything from the ALM side of things, for the accelerator that they have, which is pretty cool, that the PowerCat team released to help making, publishing your source code and all of that a much faster process. And then the custom connectors, that was another big thing I'm excited about, to custom connectors and integrating with other APIs is probably one of the biggest extension points with the Power Platform and Fusion development that we see. I mean, unlocking those data silos and being able to connect to proprietary or internal APIs. So one of the things that they're doing to make that even easier is something called independent publisher connectors. So they're going to basically open source where people in the community can create a connector to any service that there's already not a connector to, and you'll be able to integrate with that in the app experience of Power Automate is what they're starting with. So that's a huge opportunity for pro devs to build some connectors to unlock even more data that we can connect to in the Power Platform. So that was a big one that I was excited about.
So good, so good. And I mean, from an ALM perspective, it can make your life so much simpler having all those resources.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the ALM story, like just yesterday, I believe, or maybe the day before, the GitHub Actions for Power Platform are now generally available. So we're just continuing to bring more value and make the ALM story even easier. Yeah.
Tell us about Dataverse and Teams. Where are things at from your perspective in that space?
Yeah, that's an area that so they recently made it to where you can have more members and share it with more people. So you can make, I think they're doing bigger and bigger investments in that. I think the announcement that was a while back now of being able to leverage Azure API management and Dataverse Teams was huge, and we saw a lot of increase in people using the solutions there, and that coupled with the ability now to share beyond a team and with an extended amount of users and have more teams and environments in there. They're just making the support for that and the scale of the amount of apps that you can have even bigger. So we're seeing lots of improvements there. And I'm also excited about, one of the things I love about Dataverse Teams is that UI, the look and feel that you have with the Fluent UI. So I'm hoping that, on the roadmap, possibly we could get those Fluent UI controls in applications outside of Dataverse Teams. That would be great.
Nice. Exciting times ahead. Before I jump over to some quick fire questions, anything you want to kind of close out with?
Well, a few things. So I will say, you mentioned that the career switchers and maybe they're working in a company right now that has legacy stuff and they can't really test out Power Platform. I will say one of the things that you can do if you are in that situation is go get that Power Apps developer plan. There's recently some updates to that to make it even easier. They're going to be adding in support for multiple environments to it so you can test like ALM stuff. So I would say, go to aka.ms/Power Apps-dev plan and sign up for that free plan so that you can start building. You don't have to wait for your company to come around if you're excited about it. Think of a personal use case and build something. That would be like kind of my call to action there. And then one more call to action that I did want to mention, because we talked a lot about Fusion Dev. If you go to aka.ms/learn-Fusion Dev, that's the Fusion Development Learning Path that walks you through like a story of a company that's wanting to integrate with an API and how you can create a custom connector and integrate that into Power App and all that. So lots of no shortage of great resources there if you're wanting to get started.
Yeah, so good. We'll make sure we get those on the show notes so people can, from whatever app they're listening to, can, jump to those resources and get started. And that's so good to hear that dev plan's opening up in what's possible or what you can do to support those ALM processes. Okay. 3 questions for you. Random. Okay. So,
okay.
Number 1, if you could have any celebrity to be your best friend, who would you pick?
Oh gosh. Oh man, I'm blanking on celebrities now. I can't think. Probably, I can't think of her name, but I love the show Gilmore Girls, and probably whoever plays Rory on Gilmore Girls.
Yes. Yeah. I can see her in my mind's eye. I know. I'm not saying that I watch Gilmore Girls, but my wife does, and I might have seen it the entire series. Okay. What's something you believe earlier in your career, but you think differently now about?
Probably that you have to know everything, and if you don't know everything, you're going to get called out. And that's classic imposter syndrome, thinking that you have to know it all. That's definitely not the truth.
Yeah, so true. What's one family tradition you'd like to carry on in the future?
Probably just, big Thanksgiving meals. My mom was an amazing cook. So just having everyone around and just having these gigantic feasts. Always love that.
I like it. Something that Americans do so well. that we don't do so well in the bottom of the world. Recommendations for future Microsoft folks that you think would, have a story to tell that would be worth getting on the podcast.
Yeah, I was looking at who you've had on already. I think a great person would be Tasha Scott.
Mm-hmm.
She does a lot of great work internally with building apps for Microsoft to use in the Power Apps and Power Platform. She just has a lot of great stories. I think she'd be great.
Awesome. I'll get you to send me her alias. That'd be great. April, it's been fantastic having you on the show. It's been so good to see you, go from MVP through to Microsoft, and that you're still producing great content, which I think is amazing. Often people go into Microsoft and go quiet, but it seems that you're fully engaged in the community, which is exciting. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on. It's great talking with you.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, also known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a Microsoft guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. Please like and subscribe in your favorite podcast player. As always, if you want to leave a review, go to nz365guy.com/review and tell me what you think of the show. Stay safe out there. See you next time.